When I first read the title of this article, this gut reaction as a teacher, I was, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Welcome to Mento Zone Recess.
I'm Miss Shinagawa.
And I'm Mr. Mento.
We're music teachers.
And partners.
And this is a show where we talk about music teacher things while drinking coffee or tea.
Today's tea is this youthberry tea from Starbucks, Tivana.
Not sponsored. We bought it at Ross.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cool.
Yum.
So I was on Facebook and this morning I saw this article and it's called "Help! My students call me by my first name and now my colleagues are offended." So let's go through. We have this lady named Emma over here. So I'm 26 years old. I teach 9th grade English. I went to a school where using first names was common, and I've chosen to do the same with my students. To be honest, I didn't even consider anything else. Well, it turns out I'm the only teacher in my suburban public school who does it, and the other teachers disapprove. They've implied and straight out told me that they think it's disrespectful. Our admin hasn't weighed in, and officially, there's not a policy against it. It's what I want to be called, and I don't think I should have to change my preference, but I don't want everyone to hate me either. Signed off, don't call me Miss. Miss Shinagawa, would you let your students call you Aoi?
No. Well, I mean, partially no one can say it. I would not let my students call me by my first name. I grew up being told that it's really rude. So for me, if a student called me by my first name, I would feel like they don't respect my authority. Also, I just think it's kind of weird, like, especially because I'm young and I look very young and some of my students are taller than me. For those of you that have not met me in real life, I am so tall. I am a whopping 5 feet. 0.5 inches.
I'm way taller. I'm 5'5", so I'm basically towering over you and half of my students. There's a follow-up response from this, I guess, expert teacher. Personally, I had a bad experience letting students call me by my first name. At barely 21, right out of college, I taught a high school dance team. I thought it made sense to go by my first name, but it ended up undermining my authority.
Yeah.
If there's no policy regarding honorifics, then you're free to go by what you like. Your colleagues are another story. Maybe it's about personal separation between student and teacher, or perhaps they think students are doing it to get under your skin. It doesn't hurt to consider a school culture. So, when I first read like the title of this article, like this gut reaction as a teacher, I was like, just don't do it.
Yeah.
That's just not appropriate.
No, but you had a teacher, right? In like high school or something, you called them by their first name.
Yeah. We did not have a very professional relationship.
Yeah, that's my fear, is that I don't want students to think, especially because I'm pretty close in age to them, I'm like a young teacher, like I don't want them to think we're friends. That sounds so harsh.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know?
I think like if I were to take a more nuanced perspective on that, obviously even just the act of calling Mr. or Mrs. is just a totally cultural thing. And I don't necessarily think that there's any difference in saying Mr. Grayson as opposed to Mr. Mento, but maybe someone in a different environment would say, well, that's way too casual. But as long as they're saying Mr., it's fine. There's some kind of professional separation between yourself and the student.
For me, it's very contextual. Like in the classroom, with my students, I want them to call me Miss Shinagawa. But when I do like clinics, with bands, I'll introduce myself as Miss Aoi.
Oh, really? How come?
Yeah. Well, because I'm not like their teacher, but I'm also someone that is teaching them or helping them with something. So what I mean by clinics is like I'm a flute player. So when schools have band camps, I will go in and teach their flute players for one day. And that's the thing, is that it's only one day. I don't know these kids, and I want them to feel comfortable with me as fast as possible. And I find that first name helps with that.
Interesting. Well, there are a lot of comments that I think are really interesting to kind of go into a little bit.
This is on the Facebook post.
Yeah, on the Facebook page. This first one, for example, there is some research out there that says when teachers dress more casually, kids can relate/connect with them better, which in turn can build a more positive classroom culture. Honestly, I think that this could have a same/similar effect. I think that's a valid point, but I think it also goes just back to culture of the school.
Yeah.
I think what these people in this article and comments aren't really considering is that, like, a student using your first name it can be a tool for disrespect.
Yeah.
It's not just about being relatable and connecting with students. It's balancing your relatability and connectability with being able to actually manage a classroom, because students aren't always going to be nice to you and understanding that you're just trying your best.
That's the new teacher struggle, you know, is earning the respect. I think a lot of people become teachers, they come from like, of course I'm not like saying everyone, but a lot of the people I know came from middle class background. They kind of think like, yeah, I'm a teacher now, I'm gonna like walk into the classroom and everything's gonna be great, which sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't, you know? Especially when you're right out of college, you're like 22, and if you're teaching like a middle school or high school, they don't see you as like a real adult. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're like a fake adult.
Yeah.
And there's adultier adults that they have to listen to more than you. And you have to prove that, no, I am the adultiest adult, and you will respect me as much as any other adult.
Right. I think that kids that don't know you as a teacher are more likely to talk over you and not listen to you and give you just issues with classroom management and whatnot.
It does, of course, also sound like the person in the article talking about it as a veteran teacher.
Well, they're 26 years old.
Yeah, but they said they're coming from like a different school.
Yeah.
So I would say they have teaching experience. It's not like there's someone that is straight out of college, doesn't know what they're doing, and still needs to develop their teaching persona. It sounds like that's her teaching persona, you know?
It sounds like that she came from a school where that was okay. And because there was already a context for it and students understood the context, they are able to operate within that environment and be respectful, and it's okay. My worry would be if you go to a school where there's no context for it, a student's just going to take that and be like, oh, you're my friend now.
Yeah.
Which that I don't think is okay for teachers and students to have a friend relationship.
Yeah, definitely not.
It's definitely like a warm relationship, but there needs to be something more than just friendship there.
The way I describe it is we're friendly, but we're not friends.
What do you think about this premise that this person is saying it doesn't affect the other teachers? Because I would argue
I think it does.
It does affect the other teachers.
Because then it's like, well, how come I can't call you by your first name? So it's like, oh, she lets me do it. Can I do it to you?
Let's see. The next comment says, I have a colleague who goes by her first name with her students specifically because there are no gender-neutral titles. She explains to her kids at grades 7 and 8 at the beginning of the year why she prefers her first name, and it leads to open discussions about gender and pronouns. She has some pushback from other colleagues, but admin was super supportive. While she identifies as female, there are teachers who are gender fluid and they use they and them pronouns and titles but have not yet caught up to this new language. That's really interesting.
I think that's a perfectly valid reason to want to use your first name.
It also does kind of call into question that, like,
why don't we?
Yeah, why don't we have a gender neutral professional title for teachers? Because like I've seen like MX.
Yeah, but how do you pronounce that?
I'm not sure.
Mix?
We should probably look that up.
Mix Shinagawa.
Yeah.
I like that. That sounds like a rapper name.
It is. I like it too. It's simple and it's similar to what you're already used to.
Yeah.
I think there right now definitely, especially with the changing times, there are more students that identify with gender neutral titles than teachers do. So I think that's something definitely worth considering.
I think that's a good point though, about we as educators, we're trying to set the example, right? And how would it feel to be like a gender fluid or transgender, non-binary student, and all of your teachers are obviously cisgender because they don't acknowledge any pronouns, their titles are all gendered.
Yeah.
How would that feel? You would feel abnormal.
Our generation definitely hasn't gotten the opportunity to explore that as much as the younger generation. I think it's really awesome to see how many students are going by what they're comfortable going by because they're allowed to do so.
And I wanna know how I can be a good example or role model for that. Being someone that is quite unfamiliar with the current youth culture and how they navigate those things.
If you know more, let us know in the comments.
Please.
Teach us about all of this.
We don't want to be offensive, but we're also very clueless.
What's it like at your school? What do teachers expect?
So I had an issue at my school. When I first got there, I introduced myself to my coworkers as, hi, my name is Aoi. So then they started calling me that in front of the students. And then they started like introducing, like they're like, oh, this is Miss Aoi, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
They chose
my name for me. At my school, a lot of the younger teachers that work with younger kids, like the preschool teacher and stuff, they will use their first name. So I guess they just assumed I was gonna do that too, but I was kind of more trying to show that I'm equal to my colleagues and that I don't want my colleagues to feel like they have to call me Miss whatever, because we're coworkers and we're equals. And then that kind of backfired on me where they were like, oh, she wants the students to call her her that. And then the students were like, what do we call you? Like, what is your name? They were so confused.
It was just really confusing.
Yeah.
It sounds like a mess.
Like, it wasn't done to be offensive. There was a miscommunication, I guess.
At my school, everyone just calls all the teachers are Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, and then last name. But I think my school is a lot more old school when it comes to just that kind of thing as well. Like the culture is a little bit less progressive as teachers getting called like Jake or whatever. Hi, I'm Grayson.
Oh my
I
gosh.
can't even imagine there would
I
be
would never.
issues with that. I think it doesn't help too that we're young.
Yeah.
Right? We touched up on that.
Yeah. No, if I had my students call me my first name, they would just want to be my friend.
Yeah, if my students call me by my first name,
They still want to be my friend. They still want to be your friend.
Our struggle as younger teachers, especially more connected teachers with this generation, is that the students know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to figure out ways to keep that professional distance.
Yeah,
right?
especially with the new practices of being more nurturing
Mm-hmm.
and now kind of social emotional learning and all of that just general good feeling stuff is blended into education. So now that we're doing more of that and being like, how do you feel? Like, there's
Yeah,
not
true.
as much distance built into the profession as there used to be when it was just like, we're going to learn math. Okay, goodbye.
I think too is that younger teachers like us are a lot less likely to go by very authoritarian styles of teaching. Like we both know teachers like in our professional environments that are just do it my way.
Yeah.
You're going to follow instructions, and I don't knock that style of teaching,
Yeah.
you know, to each their own and to
It works for some people. It just doesn't work for me personally.
yeah, and I think that
Power
if
to you.
you're a younger teacher in this day and age, usually you tend not to go that route.
Yeah, we're not taught to do that
Yeah.
in our teacher education programs. No.
But because of that, like, there's also that other barrier of, oh, that means they're my friend. What are some ways that you've experienced students like trying to be your friend that is just not appropriate for the professional environment?
When I first started, like, students would come in and be like, I want to do this in class today. And I was like, no, I have a plan. I worked very hard on it, you know? And they just thought they could come in and be like, hey, we're hanging out, like, what are we doing today? Especially because it's music class, right? So we don't necessarily, you know, have homework. We do play a lot of games. This is elementary music. We play a lot of games, so we do have a lot of fun. So the kids thought, like, hey, this is just, like, hangout time.
Yeah, hang out time. So there's lots of talking.
Yeah.
Lots of interrupting you.
Yeah.
Talking over you. It's just not great.
Yeah.
You know? But that's a really hard thing, I guess, to describe. The balance between making sure that they're respecting you
Yeah.
and following instructions, but are also comfortable.
Yeah.
And trust you.
Yeah, that's so weird. It's like you have to do what I say, but also know that I care about you and your well-being and your feelings, but you have to do what I say.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you know what's another aspect of this
What?
we didn't think about? Like, is it even worth it if you're getting all of these outside pressures? Because this teacher is having issues with her colleagues.
Yeah.
What if it's your admin? Also, what if it's your students' parents? I would be the most concerned about that, honestly. If I'm trying to teach my students and all of these parents just think that I'm
Yeah.
just some young kid who wants to be called Grayson, I think that kind of pressure would just lead me to not want to deal with
Yeah,
it.
if it led a parent to complain, then I definitely would.
Do you think it would if you did it?
I don't know.
I think it would for me.
Yeah?
I think it would cause a lot of issues. Probably the worst would be my admin and my colleagues, but I do think that the parents would have a hard time with that too.
I think it would cause the parents to not respect me, you know? So I don't think the parents would say anything, but they would also just not respect me. And they would not listen to me if I was like, your child, blah, 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 blah. They'd be like, okay, but you don't know what you're doing. Oh,
When I am creating the music field trips and whatnot and have these parent committees, like, I don't think that it would be as easy to get people on board with what I'm saying if I'm trying to take on these leadership roles, especially with people that much older than me, if I'm on a first name basis with
Yeah.
their kids. I think that'd be hard. Okay, let's get back to the matter at hand. Do you think that it's a problem for students to call teachers by their first name?
I think not necessarily, and it depends on the situation.
I think that in most cases, it's probably kind of iffy. So I would say probably read the situation, be prepared to deal with those consequences. Also, just know the cost and benefits.
Yeah, pros and cons, make a list.
Yeah, and it's not black and white, so
Yeah.
let's be nuanced about this discussion.
Yeah, I think that was the most boring conclusion we could have
Yeah,
had. So the
well,
answer
yeah.
is, it depends.
It depends! Yay! So that's recess.
Do you agree or disagree?
Should students call teachers by their first names?
Let us know in the comments down below.
Remember to like and subscribe.
And as always,
See you next time.